Hi guys, welcome to um my channel, and today we are looking at the break or at the while loop and the break statement. Now this playlist is dedicated to use cases, so we are going to look at the use case for the while loop and the break statement. To get started, we first have to look at the intuition behind the while loop itself. So what's the intuition? Now the while loop allows you to process or you know a certain or make an expression or use an expression or a conditional statement or iterate through any activity until a specific condition is met. So so here it iterates through a task until a specific a specific condition is met. Now, there's a fundamental difference between a while loop and a for loop. For a for loop, you just iterate without conditions, right? So it's a repeated task, so to speak, until you've iterated through all elements either in a data frame or in a collection, say list. But this, it iterates through a task until a specific condition is met. And typically, it could be through the elements or the items in a collection, or we could be talking about a data frame, and we might be looking at maybe rows or columns. Now, it's important for us to look at what's a while loop, a simple while loop. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deconstruct a simple while loop, right? So this is a simple while loop. Then once we're done with that, we'll now have a use case for it. Now with a simple while loop, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create, let me just say, I call this starting underscore number. And inside of it, I'm going to have 1, right? You almost always have like that starting element when you're using a while loop. So because you have something, you have a state for which you fall back to. Now, I now write the while loop here. I say while the starting number is less than or equal to 5, right? And just like that. Sorry, there's a mistake here. That's why it failed to indent. Right, so while the starting number is less than or equal to 5, let's print, which is the task, we'll print the starting number. Now, it is important to understand that if we don't create a situation where we have a loop for a while condition or a while loop, or a situation where there's a turnaround, like there's a cycle, then we're going to have an infinite loop. So I'll put this starting number plus or equal to 1, right? Now when I run this, what happens is you see that starting at 1, right? We print the starting the starting number, then we add another 1 to it. So there's a cycle again, which adds another 1, which is the loop, and it continues again, and it checks the condition again. So this here is the condition to be met. So this is the condition to be met, right? So once this condition is met, it goes on another loop, right? Now, so this is going to happen as long as whatever is in the starting number is less than or equal to 5. So once that condition happens, and that's great. Now, for this condition, for the less than or equal to operator, is a comparison operator. The rule is the value on the left is less than or equal to the value on the right, and it remains true as long as that is. So as long as it remains like that, we are going to keep printing. And so when that condition fails, then that loop stops. So that's the first part of what we're looking at. Now, the second part of this is for us to look at how we can apply this to data analysis. So here we have while loop in data analysis. So this is going to be another important part. Okay, let me just make this the fourth. So yeah, we have this. All right, let me add other. Yes. Now, just if you checked out the previous video, which is the for loop, the use case for for loop, we're using a data set, which is the race car drivers data set. So I'll just look at the first 5 rows. So you can see we have a bunch of this. So this is typically a data set with or a data frame with, you know, race cars. You can see Lewis Hamilton, right? Shout out to Lewis Hamilton, right? So so now let me just document this. So this is the first 5 rows. Now, how do we apply a loop here? So, you know, remember, a loop will allow you to process either rows or columns in this data frame until a condition is met. So let's get started. Now, let's look at 2 things. Let's look at points and let's look at time. Right. Now we're going to create a situation where we want to calculate the maybe, you know, cumulative points. But whenever there is something unusual, like an unusual data, right, we typically stop. So that's the condition, right? Now you see what that condition is. So first thing I'm going to get started with is I'm going to create my starting point. And right, I'm going to create a starting point with a 0. So this is the starting point. And that's with 0. And I'm going to have a total point because that is what I want to work with. And so that is also going to be 0. So this is done. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to loop through the data frame. So here I loop through the data frame. And by the way, if this is your first time watching, check in the description. You are going to see the link to the data frame, or rather the data set, the CSV file. If it's not in this description, then check the previous video. And by the way, like, subscribe, and share. Right. So so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to write a while loop. Right. So I'm going to say while I, which is our starting point, is less than the total number of, you know, the rows or the columns we have. So I'm going to now use race car drivers here. So while is that, we are going to get the row points. That's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get, so I'm just going to get, so we're looking at the rows here, we're going to get these points. So here, get the row, the current rows points. Right. Now to do that, I'm going to create this called current_points, and inside I'm just going to say, look, race car drivers dot I'll use the lock function here. So if I use this and tab, it will access a group of rows and column by labels or Boolean arrays, right? So now I'm going to say, look, I have my starting point and I have this is what I'm looking at. So I'm just going to put points. So we have that. Next, remember we're still in the indentation part, right? I'm going to stop if the row contains invalid data. So here we're going to stop if the row contains invalid data. So how are we going to do this? I'm going to write an if statement and say if race car drivers dot log, right? And what I want is I want my starting point, and I am going to look at, the time, because this is where, we're going to be looking at. So we just calculate the points and we just leave out those with invalid timing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now write time, because I'm going to reference the time column. And then you can see that this is the invalid data here. So we're going to say, look, if the invalid data is, and then we're going to use, we look at like, we're typically going to use something like this that says, look at our invalid data, look at that, and this is what it is. So this is what we are going to be looking at. Right. Now, if that is the case, we're going to print, and I'm going to use the F string here. If you don't know what the F string is, check out my introduction to Python playlist, and there's going to be the F strings, string formatter, F strings, basically the recent one. Right now, so I'm going to write invalid data at index, and whatever the index is the index that we're going to reference at my starting points, because that's what we are going to have. Then I'll write stopping the loop. So right, and then we close this. Then here we're going to remember we talked about using the break statement. Now the break statement typically is a statement, it's a Python statement that lets us break from the while loop when the condition, is met, right? So that's what we use. So we write break over here, and then that's it. So you see, that's typically what we have here. So now I am going to go forward and add the current row point. I'm going to add the current rows point to the total. So I'm going to call this total, not call this, we already have total points. So again, remember, plus or equal to, so we prevent the infinite loop, right? And then we have our current points, right? Again, I'm going to show you an additional stuff here. So now again, I'm going to print here. I'm going to have and put an F string here, and I'll be in hold on. All right, index. Again, we already have our starting point over here, and so we'll say added, and we have our current point. So it makes it look, very intuitive. And then here we say current points, and we put a full stop. Then we'll go to total, full colon, and then here we have our total points, right? Hopefully we're not going to have any error. I hope I got this. Then we move to the next row once that happens. So it's not only, this is not where, apologies, this is not where we prevent the infinite loop. So we'll move to the next row, right? So here we now simply say our starting point plus equal to 1. So it just keeps moving, right? So I think this is it. And then let me just come out here. Then let's look at the output of the total points. So the output of the total points. Now here I'm going to print again, making good use of really fundamental Python syntax. So here, total points and until invalid data, because once the invalid data hits, it stops because it's a break, right? So here we now write total points. So I'm going to run this and let's see if that works. Oh, look at that. So we had the first point 10, total is 10, and we had the next index here points. We had this, and then we had an invalid, right? So if we come over here, we went 1, 2, and there was the invalid, right? Look at that, 1, 2. So that was 10, and then there's 14, and it stops. So this is a use case for the while loop, and we use the break statements to it. Now look forward to the next video, which is going to be what if we just wanted to continue until the very end. All right, so take your time, watch this, redo it as I have done it, and then pick up the intuitions while you're learning Python for data science.